I want to talk to you today about something that many of you have diagnosed in yourselves with clinical confidence. You say you're burnt out. You say it in WhatsApp messages. You say it over overpriced coffee. You say it while staring at your screen at 2:17 p.m., unable to answer an email that would once have taken you 3 minutes. I'm just burnt out. But I want to gently, provocatively suggest something else. You're not burnt out. You're spiritually done, and the difference matters. Let me start with a scene I've noticed more than once. You wake up tired, but not the ordinary kind of tired, not the kind cured by a weekend. You open your laptop. The tasks aren't impossible. In fact, they're familiar. You know how to do them. You've done them well for years. But something in you resists. Not dramatically, not rebelliously, just a quiet, heavy refusal. You scroll instead. You fantasize about quitting. You imagine moving to a small coastal town. You Google career change at 34 as if it's a medical emergency. You tell yourself you need a holiday. Perhaps you do. But here's my controversial thesis. Many of us aren't exhausted because we've worked too hard. We're exhausted because we've betrayed ourselves for too long. Burnout suggests depletion of energy. Spiritual exhaustion suggests depletion of meaning. And that's a more uncomfortable diagnosis. Now, historically, burnout is a modern term. It emerges in the 1970s, particularly in helping professions, nurses, social workers, therapists. The psychologist Herbert Freudenberger used it to describe chronic workplace stress that leads to emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced efficacy. It's a real phenomenon. I don't want to dismiss it. Overwork can absolutely crush the nervous system. But we have expanded the word so generously that it now covers almost every form of dissatisfaction. We call it burnout when we're bored. We call it burnout when we're disillusioned. We call it burnout when the ladder we've climbed turns out to be leaning against the wrong wall. The philosopher Nietzsche warned us about a particular kind of fatigue, not physical fatigue, but existential fatigue, a weariness that comes from living in contradiction with one's values. He spoke of the danger of becoming what he called the last man, comfortable, efficient, but spiritually anesthetized. Here are the myths we cling to. Myth 1. If I'm tired, I need rest. Sometimes you need rest, but sometimes you need truth. If you're exhausted by something that once energized you, the problem may not be hours worked, but values compromised. Myth 2. If I just manage my time better, I'll feel alive again. Productivity culture whispers that fatigue is a systems issue. New app, new routine, new morning ritual. But what if the issue isn't efficiency? What if it's emptiness? Myth 3. Everyone feels this way. It's just adulthood. There's a certain cynical comfort in believing that disillusionment is universal and therefore acceptable. But normalization can be a sophisticated form of denial. La Rochefoucauld once observed that we often disguise our discomfort as virtue. We say we're overextended when we mean we're uninspired. We say we're busy when we mean we're avoiding. Let me be honest, this is uncomfortable territory, because it suggests that the problem may not be your boss or your workload or even your industry. It may be that the life you carefully constructed no longer fits the person you've quietly become. And that realization is terrifying. We don't like to admit how much of our life is built on unconscious scripts. Childhood plays a role here. Attachment theory tells us we adapt early to secure love and approval. If you learned that praise came from achievement, you may have constructed a life optimized for external validation. You became the reliable one, the impressive one, the one who doesn't complain. Now imagine this. You're in a meeting. You're competent. People respect you. You speak, and they nod. Yet as you hear yourself talk, there's a faint internal voice asking, "Is this really me?" You ignore it. You've ignored it for years. Spiritual exhaustion often begins as a whisper. It shows up on Sunday evenings. It appears when you accomplish something significant and feel strangely unmoved. You thought the promotion would feel electric. Instead, it feels administrative. Think about the last milestone you reached. Did it satisfy you deeply? Or did you immediately move the goalpost? Schopenhauer had a bleak but perceptive idea. We oscillate between striving and boredom. When we want something, we suffer from its absence. When we get it, we suffer from its ordinariness. If your life is organized purely around external goals, you will eventually discover this treadmill. But spiritual exhaustion is more specific than boredom. It's the fatigue of pretending. You say yes when you mean no. You attend meetings that subtly contradict your values. You laugh at jokes you find hollow. You adopt a professional persona that slowly calcifies. I've noticed in myself and in others that the more successful we become, the harder it is to question the structure that got us there. The golden handcuffs are not only financial, they are psychological. This is who I am, we tell ourselves. This is what I do. And yet something inside resists. Let's talk about human nature for a moment. We are not machines designed solely for output. We are creatures of meaning. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps, argued that our primary drive is not pleasure or power, but meaning. When meaning erodes, energy follows. This is why you can work 16 hours on something you care about and feel strangely alive, yet struggle through 4 hours of something misaligned and feel annihilated. Consider a scene you may recognize. You're staring at a spreadsheet. It's not complicated. You understand it. But your body feels heavy. You check the time repeatedly. You fantasize about doing anything else, washing dishes, reorganizing your bookshelf, staring at the ceiling. It's not cognitive overload. It's existential friction. Or another scene. You're at a dinner party. Someone asks about your job. You describe it fluently. It sounds impressive. People are intrigued. Yet, as you speak, you feel a small detachment, as if you're narrating someone else's life. You smile, you nod, but inside you're thinking, is this it? We often interpret this as burnout because burnout is socially acceptable. It implies you're a victim of excess effort. Spiritual disillusionment is more destabilizing. It implies you might need to change, not your schedule, but your direction. Now here's where childhood patterns re-enter. If you grew up in an environment where stability was prized above authenticity, you may have learned to suppress inner dissent. You chose the sensible path, the prestigious path, the path that made your family exhale in relief. At 22, that path may have felt exciting. At 32, it may feel confining. The uncomfortable truth is this: you can outgrow your own success. We don't like to admit this because it feels ungrateful. Other people would kill for my position, you tell yourself. Yes, and that may be true. But gratitude and misalignment can coexist. I once spoke to someone who had built a remarkable career in finance. Intelligent, articulate, well compensated. He told me, almost apologetically, "I'm not unhappy, I just don't care anymore." That sentence haunted him. It felt like moral failure, but it was clarity. Burnout says, I need a break. Spiritual exhaustion says, I need a reckoning. Here's the liberating part. The ancient Greeks did not measure a life solely by productivity. Aristotle spoke of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing. It wasn't about relentless achievement, it was about living in accordance with one's virtues, one's nature. What if your exhaustion is not weakness, but feedback? What if it is a signal that your inner life is demanding revision? Now, I don't mean you must quit your job tomorrow and move to a monastery. Dramatic gestures are tempting. They give us the illusion of control. But spiritual realignment is usually quieter. First, we redefine success. Instead of asking, how high can I climb? We ask, does this direction still make sense? These are different questions. One is vertical, the other is existential. Second, we allow ourselves to admit ambivalence. You can appreciate the stability your job provides and still feel called towards something else. Complexity is not hypocrisy. Third, we grant ourselves permission to evolve. The version of you who chose this path was sincere. They did their best. You are not betraying them by changing. We are so frightened of inconsistency, but growth is inconsistency. Let me offer some practical reflections, not prescriptions, but invitations. When you feel that heavy resistance, ask yourself, am I tired or am I misaligned? If you took a month off and returned to the same structure, would it feel different? Or would the same dread resurface? Second, audit your values. Not the ones on your LinkedIn profile, the ones that make you quietly proud. Are you living in proximity to them? Third, experiment in small ways. Spiritual realignment does not require immediate resignation. It may mean carving out time for something neglected: teaching, writing, volunteering, learning. Notice where energy returns. Fourth, talk honestly. Not in dramatic declarations, but in thoughtful conversations. I'm not sure this fits anymore. Those words can feel terrifying, but silence corrodes. And finally, be patient. There is a season between endings and beginnings where clarity is foggy. We dislike this liminal space. We want certainty. But often, meaning emerges gradually. Let me also say this with compassion. Sometimes you are genuinely burnt out. Sometimes you do need rest, therapy, boundaries. I am not romanticizing suffering. But if rest alone hasn't restored you, consider that the issue may not be quantity of work, but quality of alignment. Kierkegaard wrote about despair as the sickness unto death, not physical death, but the death of the self. Despair, he suggested, is not knowing or not wanting to be who one truly is. Spiritual exhaustion can be a mild form of this despair, a quiet disconnection from oneself. But here is the hopeful counterpoint. If you can feel the misalignment, you are still alive to it. Numbness would be worse. Your dissatisfaction is not proof of failure, it is evidence of sensitivity. So perhaps the question is not, how do I recover from burnout, but what part of me have I neglected? You may not have answers yet. That's all right. The goal is not immediate reinvention. It is honest inquiry. You are allowed to change your mind about your life. You are allowed to disappoint an outdated version of yourself. You are allowed to want something deeper than efficiency. In the end, burnout is about energy. Spiritual exhaustion is about meaning. Energy can be restored with sleep. Meaning requires courage. And maybe, just maybe, your weariness is not a sign that you are weak, but that you are ready. Ready to renegotiate the terms of your existence. Ready to ask harder questions. Ready to live not only efficiently, but authentically. That doesn't guarantee ease. It doesn't promise clarity overnight. But it does offer something better than productivity. It offers the possibility of a life that feels like it belongs to you. And that, though more demanding than a vacation, is infinitely more restorative.